This time it's not April Fool's, so here's my legit review of The Princess Bride. Hey, this is a review, fools! Oh, yeah! Now, the first time I saw The Princess Bride, I thought this movie's gonna be stupid. It's gonna be about a princess, and she's a bride. Hence the title. But I watched it, and my mom, when I was really little, she wouldn't let us watch the torture scene or the RAOUSs. So I was like, oh man, I missed part of the movie. And I thought the movie was kind of dumb. Then I got a little older and I watched it again, and oh my goodness, this movie is a classic. Now, if you have not seen this movie, I'm just going to be saying everything about this movie, so there are spoilers, if you can call them spoilers. If you have not seen this movie, I don't think you're an American. So go watch this movie right now. That first scene from the very beginning to when the story actually starts is just phenomenal. The way the grandpa and the kid interact is just great. And the mom, it's just perfect in the way he like grabs the cheek and pinches it. It starts the movie off really well. Then it starts off and you're like, okay, this is kind of a boring story, as the kid says so, which is another reason why I love this movie. They're not afraid to poke fun at themselves, and that's what makes this movie so good. It starts off, obviously, Buttercup and Wesley getting together, getting married. Is this a kissing book? That whole part. And it's a great intro to a great story. And it starts going on, and as it goes on, it gets more intriguing. As the kid in the movie also agrees that it started out boring and it keeps getting more interesting. And the way that this grandpa narrates it in the few scenes that he actually is narrating is just great. They picked perfect cast for everybody in this movie. Wesley is a great actor. I've only seen him in a few other roles, and he was okay, but this was where he was the best. The girl who played Buttercup was fantastic, and all the supporting characters were just great. The king is a sleazebag, or the prince. He's just such a sleazebag. You hate him the whole time. I'll send my 5 fastest ships. It's just like, oh, I just want to punch him in the face. The king, his dad, is actually really cool. He's so adorable. And then you got, of course, Andre the Giant, and you got Inigo Montoya, or however you say his name. I've heard it so many different ways, and even though I've watched the movie 40 times, I still can't pronounce it right. You've got, what's his name, Shortness. Oh man, what's his name? Vincini. Just the way all the characters interact is just phenomenal. It's going along, obviously, as we all know, and Wesley becomes the Dread Pirate Roberts, and when he comes back, that's the best part of the movie, is when he becomes the Dread Pirate Roberts and starts sword fighting Montoya, and he starts out going, I am not left-handed. That whole scene, that sword fight, is my favorite sword fight of all time. And I don't think there's any other sword fight that even comes close. Maybe 1 or 2 in Lord of the Rings get kind of close, but they don't even compare when it comes to awesomeness of the sword fight. This one was just fantastic, funny, very well put together. Then he goes on and fights Andre the Giant, and that whole scene is hilarious. Dream of large women. Oh my goodness, it's so funny. It gets funnier the older you get. Then he goes on, and the scene with Vincini is one of the greatest scenes of all time. That whole scene where he's like, but I know that you think that I would know that, so I clearly cannot choose the glass in front of me. And he's just like delaying this whole thing, has no idea, and of course Wesley just, trumped him. There's no way he could have gotten out of it. Fantastic scene. The whole cliffs of insanity. Oh man, this movie is just, every scene in this movie is just phenomenal, and I can't say it enough. This movie's so awesome. Which is why it was hard for me to do that April Fool's review, because, this movie's just great. Then, the whole Six-Finger Man, he was an awesome bad guy, because he's creepy, you hate him the whole time, but you're not quite sure he's the bad guy the whole time until later on in the movie when you find out he has the 6 fingers, and Montoya comes back and just wrecks him. He just destroys him. That whole thing, they get the Man in Black, which is Wesley, back, and that whole thing with the witch, and the whatever he is, magician, I guess. I'm not a witch, I'm your wife! Awesome. It would take a miracle. Like, I could quote this movie, like, non-stop. Then you go into the Dreaded Forest, or whatever it's called, Fire Swamp. That whole scene's just funny. And yes, I've tried to hold my breath that whole time, and I can't remember if I ever got it. Everybody's tried to hold their breath. And then it's just the whole way this plays out in the very end. That last scene when they're in the bedroom and Wesley's on the bed and he has enough strength and he sits up and he points the sword and he says, drop your sword. And then he drops it, he sits down, and then he falls over. He's like, I knew you were bluffing, I knew he was bluffing. Like, oh, perfect end. And the whole scene where he's just like, to pain. And he's like, what's to pain? And that whole thing. And then it ends perfectly with Andre the Giant calling to them. They jump on the white horses, they ride off. Perfect ending. Then the grandpa closes the book and says, "Maybe I'll read it to you again." And the kid's like, "That would be cool." One of the greatest movies I've ever seen. And it's not a chick flick, guys, if you haven't seen this yet. That's a classic movie. Go watch it. Anyways, that's what I got. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please share and subscribe. And subscribe to all the other stuff down in the descriptions. And until next time, peace. The pit of despair. The pit of despair. Don't even think about trying to escape.